Let me, we're going to call up first Rebecca, is that Monterey? With the Bureau of Governmental Research, and Lee Zurich and Chris Nakamoka. The three of you all can come.
Do you want to go?
Yeah, can we let Scott go first?
Can Mr. Sternberg go first?
Mr. Chairman, I think they're all.
Please have a seat. Let's bring whomever you want to come up. Just come in and come up and have a seat, and let's proceed.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. Scott Sternberg, Louisiana Press Association. I'm the guy that got name checked just a second ago. I cannot sum up into words how much this will change the lives of citizens in this state. This bill is not the codification of federal Exemption 5, which federal FOIA provides in Exemption 5 for deliberative process pre-decisional until the decision is made for the executive branch. So not local water districts, not every town and municipality, not school boards, not libraries. The Kyle case from 2004 has one line that says that the deliberative process is a part of a district court decision in Washington, D.C., not even a federal decision, a state court decision in Washington, D.C., it cites to, and says that as a part of the attorney-client privilege, there is a deliberative process privilege. Now, I talked to the Attorney General this morning, and I think we all agree that there is a deliberative process privilege for certain items. It is in the governor's bill. I mean, it's in the governor's 44.5, a statute which a lot of the members here, the senators here, helped write in 2011 or 2015. The idea that because the United States Supreme Court has upheld the federal FOIA Exemption 5 as it relates to the executive branch of the federal government, and that is binding on you somehow is incorrect. And I do not think that there is any journalist or citizen who will tell you here today that they have had their public records request denied for deliberative process. I do this for a living. I haven't done it. I haven't seen deliberative process since the Jindal administration. And these gentlemen right here are reporters, and they're going to get up here, and you can ask them, and they can't lie. They're under oath. Let's talk about what this is really about. This exception is a repeal of the Public Records Law. What document is not a part of the decision-making process of your local government? These are our tax dollars, my tax dollars. Build a road. Well, that's a government decision. We're going to do that. Okay. Let's put a stoplight up. That's a government decision. The big difference between this exemption and all 30 states, and Senator Cloud's correct, they have it in 30 states, but it's not this broad, and it's always pre-decisional. So that means that when the decision's made, you get to see how it was made. That memo about the Constitutional Convention, we're not getting that if this bill passes. And look, I might be out of a job, but I really care about people being able to see what their government is spending their money on. That's what this is about. The Public Records Law was written so that the people, including the people on the dais here, can keep the government accountable. And if we were talking about a limited deliberative process privilege, I might not be so angry. But the amendment that was put on this bill just now is a fundamental change to the Public Records Law itself. It is a totally different bill aside from the deliberative process bill. So now we've got two really, really tough things for me to talk about. I would ask you desperately to vote against this bill. At the very least, defer it so that we could try to figure this out. But I don't know how to fix repealing the entire Public Records Law. This state has to trust that its government is spending the money that we give the state in our income taxes and our sales taxes. And your local government groups, the good government folks that you love, all those neighborhood groups that you go to see, When they figure out that they can't get tax exemptions anymore, when they figure out that they can't get the email between the mayor and the mayor's assistant where the mayor sexually harasses the assistant, never again. I cannot overstate, and I could not be more. You all know me. Most of you know me personally. I don't get up here and tell lies. I tell you what it is. I could live with deliberative process. This ain't it.
All right, thank you very much, sir.
Unless y'all have questions, I'm sure you don't.
There are questions.
A lot of the people got to testify. The chairman wants to go, so I'm trying
No,
to
no,
move on, sorry.
I
To
don't
move on,
want to
sorry.
lose these folk because I have 3 important bills.
I understand. I understand.
All
Chairman.
right,
I didn't wanna-
no, it's Senator Jenkins.
Yeah, well, and I was waiting for you to come up.
Yeah, I was dying to come
And
up.
you are, well, and you did disappoint. So,
Sorry.
No, I said you did not
Oh, I
disappoint.
thought you said I did disappoint.
You did not disappoint. So here's what I'm trying to find out. Because, I look at the bill and I understand what Senator Cloud is trying to do.
I do too.
And I really understand what's being proposed, in the first part. And once again, let me just reference again. When we start talking about the governor, we talk about the office of the governor. Doesn't make a difference if it's Jeff Landry, John Bell Edwards, who comes next.
Absolutely.
And security for that person and for their family, to me, is important. It just looks like we got 2 different objects taking place in the same bill. That's problematic to me. I really wish I could vote for part of it and hold up part of it. I just don't know how that works. What would be, just from in your opinion, as to the second part where we're dealing with the deliberative process, what would you suggest, being in the role that you played all this time, how we could address this in some way where some balance could come to it? Or is there, can it be fixed? I don't know.
I have tried to work on this bill, and we have not been able to. The deliberative process itself could be put into statute, like the 30 other states, and Exemption 5 for FOIA. We already have it in the governor's statute because the governor needs to be able to talk to the governor's executive council, policy director, and not worry about those communications making them embarrassed, I think is something Senator Cloud talked about. I think that's totally legit. But part of the deliberative process problem is trusting the government, right? And I think that we have to figure out what level Louisiana citizens are willing to go to. I don't think that people should be scared to put things in writing. I'll say that. But I think that there is language in those 30 other states and in federal FOIA that we could look at and come up with.
Okay.
And I think this is actually a 3-object bill, Senator, now, because the amendment to 44.4.1 overrules every case in the last 60 years of public records jurisprudence for fun. So
Yeah, there are multiple
I'm
objects.
sure that was not the intent.
Yeah, there are multiple objects in the same bill, which is another issue, that probably need to be talked out and looked at. But now, I just want to try to get some idea of if it's what was worked out in maybe some other states that could give some relief here, but at the same time make sure that we have some balance with
And Senator
public
Jenkins,
assets.
as somebody who deals with local government all the time, I totally agree that people should be able to have discussions. I just don't know that the library board should be able to exempt every single discussion. We got some people really mad about libraries in this building. They're really not going to like this bill when they figure it out.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
One quick question.
All right, Senator Carter.
I apologize for being
No, one follow-up question.
Late night, y'all.
You made
Late
a good
night.
point. We're all addressing our questions about the governor, but this bill is way broader than just the governor's office. It would apply to local governments. It would apply to school boards. It would apply to library boards, universities, all.
LSU.
I'm sure there's
You
a
never
big
get
list.
another LSU record again if this passes.
I'm sure there's a big list of all of the public agencies, but this seems. But
Senator,
continue.
because there is no limitation, it applies to every public body in the state of Louisiana without exception. The federal FOIA that we were citing earlier as precedent, which it is not, only applies to the executive branch of the federal government, the president.
And this proposed legislation applies to all branches of the state. All,
Including you, Senator, yes. Might not.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Senator Carter. All right, let's have three up at a time. We got 13 people wish to be heard in opposition to the bill. We've heard from one. Please identify yourself for the record, and you may proceed.
Very good. My name is Rebecca Mowbray, and I'm the president and CEO of the Bureau of Governmental Research. We are one of those good government groups that looks at government finances that Scott was speaking of. For the past 92 years, we have been working to make local government more effective, fiscally responsible, transparent, accountable, and responsive to citizens by proposing solutions to some of the biggest challenges facing the New Orleans metro area and working constructively with public officials to see these changes implemented. Our work to inform citizens depends on access to public records. We can't do what we do without them. We are deeply concerned about Senate Bill 482, especially the section that would shield the deliberative documents from all governments from public view. If Senate Bill 482 passes, it would be much more difficult for BGR and similar groups to research public policy issues and to serve the public because our access to documents would be limited if government officials didn't voluntarily cooperate and share them. Citizens will lose out if this passes. It will be very difficult for public policy researchers, historians, and biographers to understand how decisions were made. The process is often part of the story. Moreover, limiting public access to information will feed distrust in government, making the job of public officials everywhere much more difficult. For all of these reasons, the Bureau of Governmental Research opposes this bill. Please stop this deeply flawed legislation. Thank you for your time. On to Lee.
Thank you. My name is Lee Zurich, anchor and chief investigative reporter at WVUE Fox 8 TV in New Orleans. And, journalists don't often come here to speak in the legislature. Usually we cover it. So I hope y'all realize how serious and significant this is to us in transparency and accountability, that you have journalists up here who are coming to speak, because this is as serious as Scott said it is. This is that serious. The author of this bill talked about how the press, we don't have to disclose our, communications or different things and stories. Well, there's two differences. First of all, we are protected by the Constitution, but secondly, we aren't funded with public money. This is taxpayer money. This is your constituents' money that we are talking about here. I file an average of about 450 public records requests a year. Have been doing this for almost 20 years now. If this was existing law as was stated, there are some great attorneys in the state, some smart attorneys up here. Someone would have used this in one of those 450 responses a year, and I have never heard anyone claim this at all. As Scott said, it is not existing law. We've done so many stories on government corruption, abuse, and things like that. If you pass this law, we will not be able to serve as a watchdog like we have done before. In 2020, we did a series of stories in the Hard Rock Hotel in New Orleans. It collapsed. People died. Our stories show the inspectors from the city didn't show up. They failed to inspect the site. Many of the records we received in that series of stories may not be available now if you pass this law. Many of you have heard of the New Orleans Sewage and Water Board. This isn't just about money. What if we want to see a decision about why did the Sewage and Water Board not turn on a turbine? Why was it not working? What was the process there? If you pass this bill, we won't be able to see records like that. We put a sheriff in St. Tammany Parish, a DA in St. Tammany Parish. We've shown a Section 8 coordinator paying a six-figure salary, defrauding taxpayers by living in Section 8 housing himself. All records potentially and likely we wouldn't be able to get if this law is passed today. This isn't about clearing up the law. This is about blocking the media and, more importantly, blocking your voters, your constituents, from accountability, from accessing records that they own. They fund it. If you vote for this bill, you're voting against transparency and you're voting against accountability. You're not voting to clean up the law. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Good
Chris,
afternoon,
good to see
committee
you
members.
again.
I'm Chris Nakamoto, a national investigative reporter with Investigate TV. Prior to that, I was at a local TV station here for about 17 years. Thank you for taking the time to listen to all of us about this important bill. As Lee said, this is not something that journalists typically do. We never want to become the story, but we feel like we have to let you guys know what this would do to the state constitution and basically just be devastating to all of us. The language in the bill, part of the process by which governmental decisions are formulated, could easily be interpreted to encompass all government functions. It's intentionally vague, intentionally broad, and I've never seen anything like it before. I foresee it being used to block nearly all public information from ever being released. It's going to overburden the courts, an already overburdened system. I have two examples. In 2016, I was covering a local mayor about 15 miles from Baton Rouge. We had submitted a series of public records requests, and I was arrested because they didn't want to give up those records. It was about a pay raise that he had funded for himself. The records were ultimately released and showed exactly what the mayor did not want us to see. He was convicted over what we exposed and is no longer in office. But if this bill were to become law, it's likely we would never have seen those records. Another example, and I heard some of you guys up here asking about it already, is some of the state police stories that we have exposed. A public records request we submitted pertaining to Ronald Green up in North Louisiana showed top state police leaders were colluding over emails about his death and what caused the crash, whether or not he died from the crash or whether or not he died from the abuse. And they said that in those emails, they had proof to show that he died from the crash. Well, obviously, body camera video painted a very different picture. And when those emails came to light, it showed exactly what was happening. Other records showed Governor John Bel Edwards was also briefed about the death within hours of it happening. It was a complete reversal from what he had told the public prior. If this bill were to become law, it's likely those records would never have been released. The overly broad nature of the language could result in every records request, as I said, ending up in court. This bill does not foster transparent government. It's not transparent to the constituents you represent. And it's not transparent for the investigative reporters responsible for accurately reporting on how government functions. I'll ask this rhetorical question. If this was the prior administration, how would you guys vote on this bill? It would be imprudent to let this pass through committee.
All right, thanks to each of you for coming. The board is clear. We'll now take,
So sorry.
okay. Please identify yourself for the record and you may proceed.
I'll go first. Ladies first.
Please.
First of all, I want to appreciate all of you senators for allowing us this opportunity to speak in regards to this bill. You have already heard some.
Identify yourself for the record, please,
Yes.
ma'am.
My name is Belinda Parker Brown. I'm with Louisiana United International. We are a civil, constitutional, human rights organization for good government. And this, you heard one of our media speak about St. Tammany Parish. Had this bill been in place, we would never had the opportunity to get the media's attention because our organization do our own internal investigation through public records requests. And that's how we got the media's attention to verify the factual information that we had gotten through public records. I want to say that we do not need this bill. It is not about the governor's security. It is about public scrutiny. And to all of you, if you are elected officials, you cannot be afraid of public scrutiny. And we as citizens, as people that is concerned about good government, especially here in the state of Louisiana, where we are known for cover-up, it's public records that I'm still waiting on. It's already very difficult to get public records. Okay? So, I want to say that strike this bill, SB 482, and we cannot allow Louisiana to be at a risk of violating the Louisiana state constitution, because that is exactly what this bill would do. So on that note, I want to say thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much for coming, ma'am. Please identify yourself for the record.
Stephen Procopio, the president of the Public Affairs Research Council of Louisiana. PAR was founded in 1950, and a large part of that was because of Governor Earl Long and the difficulty of getting any information out of there, including legislators couldn't get information out of him. And there were a bunch of citizens and citizens groups that said, you know, something needs to be done about that. And we have been a champion for public records since then. We have put in a red card on this bill, and we try very hard not to do that and make that very limited. But honestly, if I had the option to put in 5 red cards, I'd do that. This is a serious problem. And I don't doubt the intent of the author in trying to codify deliberative process. And I do understand the need for deliberative process. And there are current protections in law for deliberative process for the governor's office. But what this does is it takes a line from a decision about deliberative process, and it removes it from the context and all the jurisprudence that follows it and all the tests that have to be done, and it puts it in here. So no longer would you have to go and say, okay, look, here are the qualifications met, here are the case and the facts, and in this case, deliberative process should exist. Now it's just this, hey, records that reflect advisory opinions, recommendations, deliberations, they're not allowed. So deliberative process goes out the window, and it's just the lines in law that become what the criteria is. And so all of the other case law that can protect the citizen's right to know are now gone. So you're missing things like a timeline. So after a certain amount of time that they would be allowed. That's not in here. You're missing final decisions. So you're like, oh, look, this doesn't say once the deliberations are done. It says anything related to deliberations are now protected and off limits. It also doesn't take any boundaries in terms of, well, okay, is it just the governor speaking to his staff? It is an example, which is protected now. But if now you have interagency discussions with a government agency and a nonprofit or business, because there's no boundaries here in terms of what, it doesn't say deliberative process, it just says anything that's going to affect a process by which decisions are made. I want you to imagine the next time, and it's unfortunately a matter of time before we have another major disaster, and people want to know exactly why decisions were made, why resources were deployed, and then they're not getting answers, and then they come to y'all, and your answer is, well, it's deliberative process, it's in the law. And they're not able to find out why decisions were made in a disaster. I pity y'all when that happens. I would like to be able to find something that could work, but I don't think this is the instrument to do it. I'd be happy to work with anyone, any authors, including the author of this bill, between now and the next session. But I think there are far-reaching consequences, because this isn't just the governor's office, as was stated. This is every state agency, every local agency, the Sewage and Water Board, anything that exists. Now this very broad language would apply to all of them. It is a serious problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Please identify yourself.
My name is Bishop Freddie Phillips. I represent Louisiana Auctioneers, Professional Association of Auctioneers, but I'm also here because I've seen a lot, I've heard a lot, and I've been a part of a lot. things that happen in Louisiana state government. I've been around from the earlier days of Jill Newman, Press Robinson, and guys of that nature from the north side of Baton Rouge. And I put in a lot of FOIA requests on privileged information that I would not have gotten, just like y'all passed out that amendment paper. Well, I felt that I was lacking the privilege of knowing what was on it because I couldn't read it. I mean, it disturbed me that introduction of bills that we have to make decisions on were not given to us prior to. And then you got to look at the political chicanery of the equation that happens as a result of that. I mean, right now you're trying to take away the privilege of the public and make it private, when nobody can access that information at any time after, if this bill is ever passed. I mean, there were things that I discovered by FOIA requests that I would not have known had I not had the privilege to do so. So what I test is the intent of the heart. If you have no wrong and no guile in you, then what do you have to hide from the public? I mean, we are all, I'm a pastor, so I scrutinize my life every day. I swim against the current every day. And I look at myself to say, would I want someone to know something about me that I don't want them to know? Well, don't do what you don't want them to know. You won't have to worry about them knowing what you do. This is what it seems like. It's trying to protect someone from getting exposed. Yeah, I don't know all the deals that go on behind closed doors, but I know a bunch of them do. And I don't know what's legitimate and what's not legitimate. You know, I've been knocked out of the circle because I had bids out there and I just felt like I was undermined. But if I don't have the Freedom of Information Act to be able to pull that information and see whether or not it was valid, then I feel like I'm being slighted. You know, the big fish swallow up the little fish and nobody gets a chance to eat at the table, because that's what it sounds like here.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Reverend. Thank the three of you all for coming. We have Billy Broussard, Bruce Rowley, and Kevin Kissel. And we have three more after that, and then we will close on the bill. You can leave it there. Please identify yourself for the record.
Good afternoon, Senators. I'm Kelly Kissel. I'm the managing editor of WBRZ TV. Prior to that, I was Associated Press news editor in Arkansas and Oklahoma for 24 years and retired from the AP after 34 years. I'll ditch my prepared remarks and just tell you one anecdote. It has to do with LSU football, so I'm sure I have everybody's attention. In 1984, or prior to 1984, LSU actually would pay WWL in New Orleans to carry LSU football games on Saturday night. It was not seen as a valued product, and LSU was actually losing money for its football operations. Through the Open Records Act, I was able to obtain through the LSU Chancellor's Office correspondence which showed later that the athletic director wanted to open a bid process, but didn't really had some friends with whom he wanted to work, and found a system in which he was able to essentially negotiate a contract one-on-one. The correspondence showed that the chancellor found out about this, did not like that it was happening in that way, and believed at the time that if LSU had actually gone to a formal open bid process, it would be able to collect more money, which is in fact what was adopted. If this law becomes, or if this proposal becomes law, finding out things like that will not, will forever be shuttered from us, and things will be hidden from the public eye. And so I would urge the voting against 482. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Bruce Riley, Deputy Director of Vote. I just wanted to remind everyone how much we rely on people like this and the journalists who came up and the work that they do to find out what's going on, because some of us, whether it be an organization like ours or elected officials like yourselves, take action based on what it is that they reveal. And so, well, part of the proposal mentioned, trying to avoid embarrassment, I think the word was, or criticism. Personally, I don't think that word avoiding criticism should be anywhere in that bill. I mean, I think you all know what you signed up for when you go into public service, and these are public officials and public documents, public records, and so the word public is all over them. But, this bill would eliminate that word pretty much. And so it's really one of the bad things that would come from it as well is, public record can give somebody a sense on whether you should keep on looking if there's something there. Without that, you're going to have a lot of probably frivolous lawsuits by people trying to get the records through the discovery process. And so those same people that are trying to maybe avoid the hassle of fulfilling the public records requests are going to have to deal with a lot more lawsuits coming their way. And whether they're frivolous or not, the judge is going to have to spend the time to dig in. And maybe they're going to have to demand this record that's in dispute just to find out whether there's a there. And so by having a robust public records system, we avoid a lot of that problem. And, for those of us that are critics of the government, which is, I think, all of us, it's our job to do the homework, and this bill would prevent us from doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Billy Broussard. I appreciate y'all giving me time to speak today. I'd like to point out something that Senator Miller brought up about the purpose of our insurance. The Attorney General mentioned she doesn't have an answer, and the congressional delegation can't find an answer to why FEMA. Well, I can tell you because this bayou just to say this area that was flooded back in 2006 after Hurricane Rita was a year later. From my understanding, 600 people flooded. And y'all all know right after a disaster, you're there with your constituents going, what happened? Why did you flood? Well, I cleaned the bayou. I didn't know. I got the contract. We cleaned in the bayou. I talked to constituents. They say, do you know why y'all doing this? We're not exactly sure. We're just cleaning up behind the hurricane. We find out that they've told all these constituents, well, the reason you flooded was all because of Hurricane Rita debris that was put in the bayou. Well, I'm telling you, I cleaned the bayou, and it was 10 times the debris than what FEMA originally estimated to be in the bayou. Now, I will let you know that in regards to public records, Senator Mills was helping me. He was the senator at the time. I sent emails to the parish telling them the reason why I wanted public records. I got a judgment against me and my senator, or just to say my senator today would want to help me with this. Not that we can't get the public records, but we can't even communicate with these people in the parish, police, jurors, etc. And the thing is what's very interesting about this particular case is we don't want to admit sometimes why we're flooding and why we have these problems, but it's neglect. Nobody wants to, say, it's the municipality that's not doing their proper maintenance. And through this, this was a project that I never seen so much cover up in my life. And I'm talking about at every level. GOSAP, their contractors, the parish, the drainage district, their attorneys, all of them. And interesting, the person that knows a lot about this was my original attorney, who is now our governor. And guess what? I promise you, at the time, he said, I'm willing to speak or answer any questions. I promise you, I would love to be able to sit in the office with the governor, who I have no ill will to. He's actually my cousin, and I love him very much, and I want him to be protected as much as possible. But when constituents at that level, and not just this 600 people that are flooded, but how often do we have disasters in Louisiana? All the time. I've been cleaning up behind disasters. I'm an arborist. I cut trees, so I do things to prevent disasters. But on the back end, I cleaned up a lot after storms. And I'm telling you, all this stuff behind the scenes, think about it. For no one to have an answer to why FEMA upped the rates, FEMA's not idiots. They just don't. They have a big back, and they just don't throw anybody under the bus. They just raise the rate and say, deal with it. But it's because of so much fraud, waste, and abuse and misleading the public about the real reason they're flooding. We have to have a better system than just turn around, don't drown. So, I have so much information that I obtain through public records requests and I would love to be, trusted. They say trust but verify. I have the evidence to prove that I can verify everything that I'm saying. So this bill I want the governor to be protected, trust me. But all these municipalities, to be able to cover this type of behavior up, I can't, I don't see why anybody would want to support this. It's not fair to the constituents. Thank you.
All right. Thank you also very much for coming to testify. The last three individuals who wish to testify would be Robert Burns, C.J. Matthews, and Carl Brown. So three of you will come. That would conclude the opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be brief because I think the points have been pretty authoritatively covered. I am Robert Burns. I founded the video blog Sound Off Louisiana. Several of the senators who have been behind there have been profiled, including you, Senator Fields. I'm sure you know that. But at any rate, I formed this blog 9 years ago, and I will echo the same sentiments that Lee Zurich said. I have made, not nearly as many as him, but I have made an enormous amount of public records requests, especially on Louisiana State Police. The deliberative process has not been asserted one time, so this is doing something. It's got to be. And all I can say is I've had numerous features that I have been able to produce, and it's a video blog because of the public records. I'm flattered that Lee Zurich has taken Sound Off Louisiana footage, gave the credit for it. I'm flattered that Chris Nakamoto has taken Sound Off Louisiana footage and given credit for it. I don't make one dime. You know, there was a mention about selling newspapers earlier. I make nothing, zero. It's a money-losing operation. I do it strictly because I love this state. I was born in this state. I've resided my entire 60 years in this state. But the reality is this state is perceived as corrupt. I mean, it's that simple. So here we are looking at enacting something that will make it even more difficult to detect the corruption. So you're taking one of the, I'm sorry, you haven't voted. If this passes, would be taking one of the little small David slingshots that we've got to try to go up against Goliath and removing it. And I just think it is enormously harmful. I personally don't think it was a mistake that, as Senator Jenkins pointed out, multiple objects here. Nobody's going to want to vote against protecting the governor. And so it puts all of y'all, and if it goes to the floor of the Senate, it puts them in a precarious position. And I can only say that I don't envy being any one of y'all. I don't envy the other members of the Senate, because I believe what has happened here is that you've been put in to have to make a choice between alienating a brand new governor and his honeymoon period versus alienating an awful lot of constituents. With that, Senator Fields, thank you for the opportunity to address.
Thank you very much for coming to testify today, sir.
I'm C.J. Matthews. I'm a retired captain with the Ascension Parish Sheriff's Office. Let's talk about law enforcement for just 1 second. Who polices the police? I'll tell you right now, nobody. All you got to do is look at the Robert Greene incident, and there's many others out there. When you are the chief law enforcement agent for a parish and you decide that you don't want to put somebody in jail who committed a crime, who do you go to? Is it the state police? They're not going to do anything. Is it the AG's office? They're not going to do anything either. You got to give the public the ability to get that information. Minus that, you are violating the public's trust. Enough said.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, that concludes the testimony in opposition. Yes, sir. Representative, did you fill out a card? Because where is it? Okay, I may have called your name, and please come and try to make it brief.
I will.
Because
I will make it brief.
Yes, sir. Please identify yourself for the record, and you may proceed.
Hello, members. Appreciate your time. I know it's been a long day. I am Barry Ivy, a citizen. People said in House and Governmental Representative Ivy, I want to make a distinction. It's former Representative Ivy. I do not want to be accused of being a state legislator in this term. So with that said, I oppose this bill for several reasons. I wasn't able to listen to the testimony by Mr. Sternberg, but I'm sure it was perfectly legally sound arguments. And so I'm not going to talk about the details and the nitty gritty. I just want to bring into some focus a more practical perspective. This bill does create a paradigm shift in executive branch public records. This bill will limit the access to public records in a manner that only allows the people to be aware of what their government did after they did it, and ultimately prevents the people from accessing records to find out how government did what it did. And so to me, that is a dangerous shift. You know, everybody campaigned recently this last election cycle, including the governor and many legislators. And for people on the right, you know, the use of the term conservatism or conservative, it's a central theme in their campaigns. I saw it, you know, everywhere. And so during the gubernatorial campaign, Governor Landry did it and many others. And so I would like to read a brief excerpt from an article written by Glenn Sproverio and published on the Imaginative Conservative website on May 15, 2017. It says, "The genuine conservative is not motivated by fear, avarice, or power. The very constitution of his being is directed toward the perfection of his soul." And so it says, in this modern usage, the word ideology is not synonymous with benign philosophy. Rather, its contemporary meaning invokes a messianic, almost religious veneration of abstract ideas that promise perfection in the political order. A secular fanaticism parading under the rubric of genteel intellectualism. Ideology cares nothing for the soul and scoffs at the idea of a spiritual order beyond the reach of state authority. Under its dictatorship, everything must succumb to the omnipotence of an abstract idea to which all individual and social actions are subordinated. You know, Senator Cloud said something earlier, you know, testifying to Governor Landry's, you know, transparency. But I recall, and I don't know if this ever happened before, but former, you know, then AG Landry sued a reporter for making a public records request. I mean, in her personal capacity. And this is the same person who supports this exception to public records. And so I'm sorry, I don't trust government. The people don't trust government. We had an election, the last election cycle, 25% turnout in the general election. Why? Because people find this institution to be deplorable. And they don't feel like, why should we show up? And so what do? In 5 days, we make massive changes to policies that affect every single person in the state. And we do it in 5 days under, emergency declarations. And we're told that, we need to be able to access some of these records because maybe you've only got 5 days to intervene in what's being pushed down the pipe. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ivory. All right, that's it.